Well, hey everyone, welcome to another exciting episode of Secrets to Real Estate Investing. And I have with me today a gentleman who has flipped over 100 houses already in his house flipping career. And I'm really excited for him to come share the secrets to his success and the tips and the things he's learned along the way. Because believe me, at 100 houses, you've learned a lot of things. So I'm so excited to welcome to the show, Anson Young.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Holly, for
So
having
glad you
me.
could join us. Oh, so happy to have you. Well, why don't you give our listeners a little bit of your background? Tell us about, where you came from, what you were doing before real estate, and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. I started off as in IT, in information technology, as a network admin, and like everybody else, I got laid off in about 2003. So I had a kind of a crossroads choice. Do I want to double down on IT and go down that route, or do I want to do something else? And actually, most people are like, oh, I did this one thing, and then, everybody lived happily ever after. I actually started down the IT path again, and I got about halfway through my first certification for networking, and decided, you know what, I hate corporate, I hate the cubicle, I hate just the politics of IT. And so right then I decided, you know what, I got to do something different. A friend of mine handed me Rich Dad Poor Dad, kind of just out of the blue. We had been talking about real estate and just different ways to kind of get out of the rat race. And he said, oh, speaking of rat race, here's a book about that. And so I read that book, and literally I finished the last page and I said, I'm doing this now. And it wasn't always an easy road from there, but we had moved to Phoenix at the time. So we had just landed in Phoenix, and I decided, you know what, new city, new start. Let's just, get this going in real estate. And it took me about a year before I got my first deal going. But in that time, I was doing work for other agents, work for investors, just trying to learn as much as I could about this whole crazy real estate thing that I didn't understand. And, obviously I've continued doing that. And that was 2004 is when I first started. And I didn't get my first deal until about 2005.
Wow. So that took some patience and perseverance to hang in there. I mean, were you thinking of giving up at all during that time?
Not really. It's kind of like you're a little bit younger and a little bit more bullheaded, and I was determined to make it work. And I was working a little bit at the time, just bartending, making ends meet. My wife was working at the time, so it's not like we were struggling or anything. It's just struggling to get this whole thing off the ground. And the proof of concept, right? Like if you don't have a check in hand, all the work that you're doing kind of feels like a waste. But once you get that first check in your hand, you're like, oh my gosh, and you look at it and you go, this works. And how do I repeat this? How do I do this over and over again? So
awesome. Well, now that you kind of brought it up, tell us about your first deal. I always love to hear people's first deals.
So my very first one, it was supposed to be, Phoenix at the time had like 40% appreciation a year, and it was just going crazy. And so I think you could like throw a dart at a map and hit a deal that you're going to make money on eventually. So I had an agent friend of mine who I was doing work for. She brought me this deal. Turns out, thinking back, I didn't know at the time, but it was it's kind of a wholesale deal from one of her clients. And so, they passed it on to me. I was like, you know what? I think that there's upside in this. And so we closed on it with a conventional loan. I had no idea what I was doing. So I tried to rent it. I tried to lease option it. And the whole time I'm just clueless. And we actually eventually, we looked at each other. We're like, this needs work. It's in a decent area. This is our very first house. We'd been renting up until that point. This is the first house that we owned. Why don't we just move into it and fix it up? So we did that. We moved in. It took us a year, or it didn't take us a year, really. We did all the work. We lived in it. We lived in it for a year, and then we sold because, to be honest, Phoenix is pretty terrible. It's way too hot there. So we wanted to come back to Colorado. So we sold our house. We made about 60 grand. And so when we landed back in Denver, it felt like starting all over again because I didn't know the market. I didn't know what was going on, but at least I had a deal under my belt and, $60,000 in my pocket. So it wasn't that bad.
awesome. So 60,000, that is huge profit for the first deal. And okay, this is like the little nerdy accountant in me. Did you get to keep it all, or have you lived in it more than 2 years? Was it tax free, or did you have to pay tax on it, or what was that?
It wasn't tax free because we only lived there for a year,
Okay.
so we did end up paying tax on it. Obviously, we rolled a big chunk of that into a down payment on a house that we bought in Denver.
Nice.
And yeah, so unfortunately we didn't get the 2-year deal. Looking back, if we stayed maybe even a few months longer, the market started cooling off right at the end of 2005. So we might have been stuck there for years, or had to sell at a loss or do a short sale if we stayed there for another year, because the market really started changing right when we sold.
Oh, I remember.
Yeah.
those turning points. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So that was really smart of you. Sometimes it's not worth trying to time everything for taxes.
Right.
Versus like losing it all or not be able to escape the heat. If I'm not a big fan of 120 degrees. And
no.
Yeah, quick little side note on that. One of my friends saw my car magnet on my car recently and said, "Wow, it comes off." She's like touching it and holding it, because I had one on my car and it melted to the car. I go, "What?" But she was from Phoenix. So
Yep.
She's like amazed that my car magnet wasn't permanently melted to my car.
It'll do that. And I wish that exactly. I wish that transition was masterminded, and I'm super smart, and I saw the market changing, and but it was all just luck, just dumb luck. So we got out, we got in, we got out, we got paid. So
awesome. Well, tell us more about maybe one of your favorite deals or your best deal.
So I think that a lot of people use money as a metric. I mean, I could say, hey, I did this deal and I made X amount of money. I like deal stories. I like talking. Like when I meet investors, I kind of ask the same thing. I'm the weird guy who's like tell me like the weirdest thing that happened, or like the story. And so one of mine is a hoarder house that we did in North Denver. It's a pre-foreclosure. And we actually started by knocking on the door. And I say we as a partner and I. We started by knocking on the door. This nice older lady had come around the back. She didn't answer her front door, so that should have been red flag number one. But she came around the back. Yeah. Well, and this is also a place where it was severely overgrown. It would have been a great driving for dollars lead, but severely overgrown. But like the closer you got to the house, the more you can just smell the house from the outside. And so that should have been kind of red flag number 2. But we start talking to her. She's interested in selling. She kind of gives us her payoff, and she's like, yeah, I want to work with you guys. I really need to do something. Obviously this is going to go to foreclosure, and I don't want that to happen, so let's see what we can work out. We actually ended up coming up with a price that was pretty good. It was about 110,000, and for what it was, we're like, that sounds pretty good, but we need to get inside to poke around, see what our rehab costs are going to be. And she kept resisting. She kept saying, no, well, how about next week? How about the week after? I need to clean up. I need to tidy up a little bit. And so we had time in the foreclosure, so we were like, okay, take your time. We'll get in there when you're comfortable. We don't want to be pushy or anything. And so when her sister finally called us, it's like, listen, I know you've been talking to my sister, and I gotta tell you, it's the worst place that you're ever gonna walk into. And so she keeps saying she's gonna clean it up and everything, but no amount of cleanup is gonna make it clean enough for her to have strangers in there. So, she's like, I'm gonna get you inside. And finally we got inside, and it's like 4 or 5 feet of trash. She wasn't hoarding like kittens and glitter. It was like trash, and she had lots of cats. And so they were kind of doing their business all over the place. That's what you can smell from outside the house. And so anyways, we ended up closing on that one and letting her stay for a few more weeks. It ended up to be where she kind of had a breakdown. She started cleaning stuff up. And next thing we knew, we got another call from her sister. She's like, she's done. We kind of moved her into a home where she could get better, is kind of the way they put it. And so we sent our guys in, and her sister would go through and pick up all the all the important stuff, the important papers and china and heirlooms and stuff they had. And we just put everything into like 10 dumpsters. And there was just, I mean, I think we caught 10 cats. We found like 2 dead cats, and just cleaned out this whole place. But, you know, at the end, you know, the house is what it is and the numbers were what they were. But at the end of the day, we got to help her deal with this situation that almost nobody else would have touched. Like your average agent would have run away screaming. Your average buyer, you know, wouldn't have even touched it. And so we got to help her with this, you know, this crazy problem that ended up giving her, you know, kind of this mental breakdown. But, you know, she got to walk with some money. She didn't have to go to foreclosure. And we turned that house, believe it or not, into, you know, a nice livable place for, you know, a nice family to move into. And so just the stuff that we saw in that house, it just, I mean, it is horrible, but it was a nice story at the end because she got the help that she needed, and you know, a new family moved in. So what more can you ask for than that?
Well, hey, I think you win the prize for the worst ever cat house. I mean, we've definitely bought a lot of houses with, I mean, sometimes they find rats and,
Sure.
you know, rat poop in them and stuff, but 2 dead cats and 10 live ones. Wow.
Yeah, it was, I mean, there was that, and there was a broken toilet situation where one of her, like, her toilets hadn't worked for, she said, probably about 6 months. And so she had been using random buckets and stuff as for a bathroom. So, so I mean, the story, there has layers and layers to it, but
oh my gosh.
So yeah, between the cats and the buckets, it was a, I mean, I don't think we even got into the basement until after we bought it. So, I mean, it could have been a nightmare down there with foundation issues and stuff, but thankfully it wasn't. So there's a lot to learn there, like, for sure.
Do you happen to remember how much you made on that one?
At the end, we did end up spending a little bit more on rehab than we initially budgeted. Like, we replaced the entire, all the ducting for the HVAC because it was full of just stuff that had gone down the vents, and we actually ended up replacing all of the ceiling and all of the insulation, but we still ended up making right around 60,000 on that one.
Wow, awesome.
Yeah, so it worked out just fine. It was just you know, it was a lot of work. I think we put like 70 grand into it. So.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm just curious. I'd love to know the cost of things around the country.
Sure.
Dumpsters here, like the cheapest dumpster, like a 30-yarder that I've ever gotten is like 400. I think that's a big score if I get it for 400. But they've been typically more like 700 to 800 for a 30-yard dumpster. How much do you guys pay for a dumpster? Do you have
so 40-yard is 450. 30-yard is 400. And so it's not. I mean, it's still tough, especially if you're doing 10 dumpsters worth. And that's not our first 10 dumpster house, but yeah, each, you know, paying double like you do, 800 would be pretty brutal. So that is so shocking to me. Like, when we fill the dumpsters, I'm like, how did all of that fit in that little house? You're just like shocked. I mean, I'm doing one right now just in the last week, and the homeowner started it. He's so proud of himself. He got the little 3-yard dumpster because that's all he wanted to handle at a time. And it's probably been dumped about 10 times. And then I went and did some more trash with my kids, and we got a couple more dumps out of it. But, you know, I mean, some people, that's all they can handle. Like, it's just too unfathomable to fill up, you know, a 40-yard dumpster that you walk in and fill up. So. Oh yeah, and the neighbors who, you know, use your dumpster to throw away their old treadmill or couch and stuff. So don't you love that? Yeah. Like, thanks, dude. Thanks for filling up like a big chunk of my dumpster. It's not free, you know. Yeah, leave me a check. Thanks. I say, this isn't Colorado, you know. It's expensive here. There you go. Exactly. Yeah. Well, why don't you give us some of your best advice that you've you know, developed over the years. You've learned so much from all your flips. So give some words of wisdom to our new and starting flippers. So I think when you're kind of starting out, like, especially being a new investor, that, you know, the first learning curve is pretty brutal. And I think that people aren't patient enough to, you know, do the work. It's like, you want to be the guy who's doing 20 deals a year today, but you got to start somewhere. And so I think that there's a patience factor. there's a consistency factor that's also tough. Like consistently doing the marketing, even if you're not getting the results that you want. Everybody wants to send out, their first mailing and get 10 deals. Well, it doesn't typically work that way, at least not here. You could always luck out and get a deal, your first mailing, but more likely it's going to be 6 to 8 mailings before you start getting good traction on your campaigns, especially in a tougher market like Denver or Seattle or Portland. And so there's that staying consistent, even though the results aren't there yet. You're trying to rush it, and so also being patient through that whole thing. And I think the last thing would be, pay attention to the market. Try and shift before the market shifts out from under you. And doing this since 2005, we used to do all MLS deals. We just, REO deals. And then when REO started going away, it was short sales. When short sales started drying up, if you didn't shift to off market and you're still an MLS buyer, you're out of business probably at this point, at least in my market, if you're not doing, direct to seller. What's next? I'm not sure. I don't have that crystal ball, but I'm always on the lookout for where's the market shifting next. Right now selling flips is super easy. Selling anything is super easy. And so paying attention to days on market, paying attention to price reductions and inventory helps me set up success for my next projects, because those things could start, the markets could start loosening up, and then now I have more competition. I have longer days on market. My numbers will look different than 3 to 6 months ago. So always be on the lookout for those market shifts too. So those are kind of my 3 big pieces of advice.
Those are awesome. And I remember we have a local guru by the name of Bruce Norris, who is super into, I'm going to call him super nerd in a very affectionate way. He loves to analyze charts and graphs and create charts and graphs of data to interpret and predict the real estate market, which he's pretty darn good at. And I just heard him speak last week, and I'm not a big fan of watching the charts and graphs. I just want him to tell me what it means and what to do.
Right.
Do I sell the rentals yet? Are we okay to keep going? And he's saying our Southern California market is strong and there's no indicators of an upcoming crash in Southern California. That's what he focuses on.
Sure.
So, my advice too is find the local experts and listen to them and network with people. Don't work in your little bubble and think it's going to stay the same, because you are exactly right. I had to do a huge shift from buying at the courthouse steps, trustee sale. Our first 100 houses we bought that way. And then that just fell off a cliff. That opportunity was gone when the big hedge funds moved in and way overpaid for everything. Like, okay, well, that well is dry. What's next? And then I started, networking with realtors to go find deals.
Sure.
So you got to be able to turn and pivot, or you die. You're done.
Yeah.
You can't use the same strategy for, usually more than a few years. So
Right.
Good for you for being able to pivot and stay in.
And Bruce is super famous. I've heard of him and know
You've
that
even heard of him, huh?
Yeah, he's the Southern California. He's got the crystal ball and knows what's going on. So that's awesome.
I
That
love
is
it.
awesome.
Yeah, I got to have him on my podcast soon. Yeah, he's awesome. What do you have in the way of advice on negotiations? And do you have any stories of success or failure, but not really failure, but maybe where you learned something? Because I'm a big believer in it's not win or lose, it's win or learn. And as a new investor, we do more learning sometimes than winning, right? We get better and better. So give us some advice on negotiations and what you learned.
So my big thing with negotiation is, I'm not like super learned when it comes to, I've read 1,000 negotiation books, and I've probably read a handful, 2 or 3, but my natural style is rapport over everything. And so, especially in a distress situation, or, a lot of the things that we target are distressed in some way or other. So they're in trouble or they need help. They may not know that they need to sell right now, but so this rapport piece can win you deals over price even. So you might have 2 people coming in on the same house, 2 investors, and whereas I've built a relationship there, and somebody else, the other guy has not, a lot of times the seller's like, I trust you. I like, you've been with me this whole time, and you've, listened to my story about my kids. And, we talked about, the Broncos and whatever else it is. And this other guy just comes in and talks numbers and doesn't build that connection. And a lot of times I'll win deals over the other guy, even though my offer isn't as good. And so I think that just that natural connection, if you're there to help first, the money follows. And so if you're there just for the money, or you're super desperate, it's weird how people can sense that, kind of like a sixth sense, like, oh, this guy needs this money to pay his rent or to make his car payment, like, and he's super just needy. If you're kind of laid back and you're building rapport and you're there to help, that's kind of my natural negotiation style. And I think, you'll have referrals and you'll have friends and you'll have a lot of things at the end of the day, and over just the money. And so it's huge. Sorry, my dogs are going crazy.
You have your assistant, your dog. What's your dog's name? You got to mention it now.
I got Izzy and Ginger, because my wife just went to go pick up my son from school. So now they're like, oh, what happened? Where'd she go? So, you guys
like,
speak
hey,
quiet.
Dad, where'd everyone go, huh? How
Exactly.
fun. Nice.
So that's kind of my thing, is like, you can read all the books and you can get, you can become the slickest salesman known to man. But if you're not there to build a relationship and to actually win their trust and win rapport, you're going to have a hard time, or you're going to not be able to sleep at night, or, I don't know. I've seen guys of that style, and I don't know, how they, I don't know how they have any friends or how they're married. It's just, just kind of weird personality to be that slick salesman. If you're just natural, you're there to help, you're there to build rapport, then I think you'll win every time. So
yeah, people can definitely sense that. And I take that same approach of building rapport and caring about people. Beyond just dealing with sellers, I do it with, whoever I'm interacting with, the contractors or realtors, whatever. Just be a nice person and care about people, and it is going to get you far. Like, you're going to have so much more success and be so much happier if you're just kind and compassionate and you help and care about people. And even if you're kind of like floundering at the beginning and you're not this all polished and professional person, and you're like kind of maybe stumbling, if you're just kind and helpful, you might still win out over the slick guy that's done hundreds of deals and definitely still win over.
Yeah. Sometimes sometimes the seller wants to help out the little guy, or the guy who's, the guy who's like, oh, I'm a one-man operation and I'm here to help. And then the other guy shows up and he's like, oh, I got a team of 10 people and we buy 100 a month. They might be like, I want to help this guy out. Plus he's way nicer. So
yeah, cool. Okay, well, another thing I know you have experience with that I'd love you to touch on a little bit is about direct mail. And for our listeners, Anson has generously given us he's going to give us a free PDF download of this 7 deadly direct mail mistakes. Can't read my own writing here. 7 deadly direct mail mistakes. So he's going to send that over. So Anson, pick one of those and let's elaborate on that right now. Go ahead and tell us what you think kind of the worst one is.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's the worst one. I think, I think I would have ranked them in order of best to worst, but it's kind of a do not do list instead of a do list. And so one of them, number 4 on there is don't be too repetitive. And I think that people, it's so much easier just to send out like the same exact postcard every single month to the same people. And you just come off as a robot. You come off as just, like I don't care what you're reading. Like, you're just going to read it every month and I don't care. Or somebody who just sends out the same exact yellow letter with the same exact verbiage. It's like, people aren't dumb. They're going to get that every month. They're going to open it up and they're, does that help build trust? Does that help build rapport? Does that help your brand at all if you're just sending the same exact thing over and over? Is somebody going to respond on the 10th month of getting the 10th exact letter from you? And so, obviously the to take away from that is to vary up, vary what you're sending, vary your message, build your message on each other. So by like month 3, hopefully they've read month 1 and 2, 3 builds on that. It might say something like, hey, haven't heard from you yet. I'm still interested in, buying your house. I can help you out. So it's not just the same robotic, like the same exact thing every single month. And so I like to vary up the message, and I like to vary up the medium. So I'm not sending the same exact, letter every month. I might send a postcard, a professional letter, a handwritten letter, and then just vary that so that people see that you're real, that you're, that you actually care about what you're sending. You're not just blasting it out and hoping for the best and blasting out the same exact thing every time. So
that sounds like great advice. So do you put pictures of your dogs or your family?
I need to. I do have friends who do the dog mailer, and they do pretty well with it. And now that we have 2 dogs, one of them is pretty new. So I'm thinking about it. I think that people relate to that. They're like, hey, Izzy and Ginger want to buy your house, and they're like, oh,
how cute!
I like dogs too, So
yes, who doesn't love a cute dog? Yeah. One of my friends sends out direct mail and puts a picture of him and his wife and his cute kids. They're like, 8 and 10. I love it. I'm like, oh, that's what they look like now. It's so cute. He doesn't know it's me because it's an entity that he doesn't know. So I get it. Like, I think it's so fun when I get him,
Yeah, that's a great way to connect to people on that level. That's just like building rapport before they even talk to you. They're like, oh, I have kids too.
I'm still not going to sell my house at a deep discount, but hey, I like getting his cute family pictures. Somebody else might get excited to see his cute family pictures, and then they call him because what a cute little family that is.
That's right.
So is direct mail your primary method of acquisition right now?
It's I kind of have a top 3. One is I don't call it just direct mail. It's direct to seller. So it's however you can get in front of that seller, cold calling, door knocking, direct mail, getting in front of them on the internet, whether it's email or targeting them through ads, like that kind of direct to seller is a big piece. The next one is networking, and then the third one is referrals. So those are obviously a little bit more takes a little bit more time. They all take time, but networking and referrals definitely take time and trust to build up with these other people who you're relying to bring you deals or clients or refer their aunt to you or whoever that is. You have to kind of build that trust and build that up over time for sure.
And how much do you spend a month on your mail campaigns, if you don't mind sharing?
The amount I spend, let's see, I can tell you how many I send. I send about 2,500, and I think that my cost on that is maybe just under $2,000, I think. So, so 2,500 pieces. So it's not a lot. I'm not one of those huge volume, send out 50,000 and hope for the best. I really try to niche down and target my list, so I'm not just wasting my time just sending out stuff that to highly competitive lists. I don't try to be one of 20 people. I want to be one of 1 would be ideal, but one of maybe 4 or 5, lower competition lists for sure.
Smart, really smart. Okay. Well, we're just about needing to wrap up here. So listeners, if you want to go get his 7 deadly direct mail mistakes, go head on over to my website at hardhatholly.com/69. We are on episode 69. And you can also text the word hard hat. Yes, we're pretending it's all one word with no spaces. Hard hat to the number 38470. That's 38470. You text hard hat to that. We'll send you this week's download and a link to all the prior ones so you can get Anson's great information. Now, Anson, how do people get in touch with you, learn about you, and talk about, want you to tell about this book that you did with Bigger Pockets?
Yeah, probably one of the best places to get a hold of me is through Bigger Pockets, just biggerpockets.com/users/Anson. That's a good way to get a hold of me and connect. And the book I wrote is published by Bigger Pockets. It's called Finding and Funding Great Deals, and it takes you from 0 all the way to the closing table. And then even beyond that a little bit in how to repeat the process. So it's not a fix and flip book, it's not a rental book, it's not a house hacking book, but it's all those in one. So it just gets you to the closing table. What you do with it after that, I don't really care, but it gets you there. So, targeting your market, how to, reach sellers, how to network with agents, how to analyze deals from ARV to repairs, how to negotiate. There's a big negotiation section, a big funding section, obviously, since it's in the title, and then all the way through, like I said, to the closing table, just all the way to the end. And then, if you want to go burn it down after that, I don't care, but I got you there. So we're good.
That book sounds awesome. I can't wait to get my hands on it. That sounds awesome. I love learning from other people too. And wouldn't you agree that no matter how many deals you do, you're still learning?
Oh, absolutely. I think the minute you think that you've arrived, or that if you're done learning and you know it all, I think you're setting yourself up huge for failure. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Yeah, you gotta be coachable, you gotta be open-minded, ready to learn. I'm always like wanting to learn and soak up from other people. I mean, last night I was on a little panel at a local real estate club, and one of the girls, there was 3 of us ladies up front, and I have my journal notebook ready to take notes, and I was like, what are you doing? Like, I'm taking notes because you ladies know more than I do about some of this stuff. I mean, there's always people to learn from.
Exactly.
So yeah, be open-minded.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you so much today for being on the podcast. You're awesome. I mean, I'd love to have you back and hear some more of your great stories.
Absolutely.
Hopefully,
anytime.
Maybe less dead animals in them, but hey, we'll take them all. So yeah, so listeners, get out there and connect with Anson on Bigger Pockets and go get his book. It sounds amazing and written from the perspective and experience that he's had in real life. It's not just somebody writing a bunch of junk that hasn't done it. He's lived through it and worked through it all. So
That's
go
right.
get the book. Well, thank you again for your time, Anson. And listeners, get out there, take some action, and go have some great success. Hey there, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like it and click subscribe to get notified of more videos. And you can go to hardhatholly.com for a free download on secrets to finding great deals.